Hello, good morning, and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. As you may have predicted, today the discussion is about the health of the economy. Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has given us what he says constitute the factual analysis of the situation. He says the data is what spoke. He was only a vehicle through whom the data spoke. And by the data, by all standard and all the measures, this government has done far more than the NDC did in 8 years. Of the 38 or so of the promises that they made, they have fulfilled 303 of them so far. Some of them, they are still in the process of delivering. We fact check to be sure if what Dr. Bawumia is talking about is fact. But the NDC says this government has received far in excess, double revenue than the NDC received, and yet it has nothing to show for it. They make allegations, including some $6 million they say cannot be found. We will interrogate that as well. And then we will still ask questions about the Galamsey fight. Dead, can it be revived? And who is answering for all the mess? We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. I'm your host, Samson Ladi Anyenini. And this morning, my guest from my right is Kofi Bentil. My left is Kofi Bentil, Senior Vice President, Imani Africa. And as you know, Imani has also done his own scorecard on the performance of the government. So it will be interesting to share with you their perspectives, particularly after having heard from Dr. Bawumia and the marks that he gives their government. There's one panelist who is not in yet. I understand he's on his way, John Jinapo. He is MP and member, Finance, Mines and Energy Committees of Parliament. As you may have noticed, he has also been doing his own town hall, responding to the Vice President and stating what he says are the contrary facts and making some really very, very, very serious allegations that we need to interrogate, including what he says is some $6 million, is it, that's missing, 655, that is missing from money that's supposed to have come from, is it the energy area. Also here in the studio, to my right, Dr. Ebo Texin, a senior lecturer, Department of Economics, University of Ghana. Doc, thanks for joining us. Okay. And Dr. Gideon Buako, a spokesperson to the Vice President. Welcome, Doc.
Samson,
right.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your appointment as a research associate of the SOAS University of London.
Most welcome.
That came as good news, and it was all over in the news.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You may be familiar with these things. What does that mean?
It could be they called him or he applied, but what it means is that they have found you
worthy to bear their name and to hopefully contribute to them. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, what do you say about that?
I mean, that's big news. Accumulating. I mean, so as you said, good.
I don't know how it's going to divide. Are you leaving?
Oh no.
You leave from here.
As you know, research associate positions are not full time, so
So it's good news. I mean, so we hope that you learn a lot from this association with them to help us. I mean, our development challenges, and his position as the spokesperson, vice president.
Yeah. Thank you.
Congrats.
Thank you very much. Yeah. We want to start on the note of the Galamsey fight and deal with that really very quickly. We have done Galamsey. This will be the third week that we are talking about the matters coming up out from the Galamsey fight. So we'll deal with that quickly and then dedicate the rest of the program in excess of 2 hours to the health of the economy. Whose report should we believe? Like in the Valley of Escol in the Bible, those who came to say that report about how they felt that they could be defeated and that they didn't mean much and that they were giants, and the other report that suggested that, look, it was possible. Whose report should we believe? Dr. Bawumia or what the NDC in opposition is saying? So let's take a listen to this report put together by JoyNews.
So 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 32, 33.
Voice of the police officer who led the special exercise tracking the excavators brought to this yard. The yard measures the size of a football field. On the front gate is the inscription, New Washing Bay. The yard has been taken over by weeds. I see one broken down excavator, 4 heavy-duty equipment batteries, and an abandoned vehicles parked in the yard. Interrogating suspects during the special exercise, it came to light that the excavators were allegedly brought to the yard by the MPP Central Regional Vice Chairman Horace Eko Ewusi, but all were released except one.
We need you at your yard right now. Yes, we are in your yard. We need you here.
What's the problem?
We are looking for the excavator that was in your yard.
The owners have come for it.
Who is the owner? We want you here. Who is the owner?
The person who wants to speak.
Who is he?
It's called Echo. What do you call it?
Echo, I see. Came for it.
When? He brought it to me, so he's come for it.
When?
He came for it like what? Last week? Sometime last week, yeah.
Sometime last week.
Yes. We have a big this time.
So I want a copy of that document.
The document is there. Where can I show it to you?
Okay. I'm giving it to him. Show him so that you give it to us.
Okay.
Hello, boss. Yes.
Show him the over. You can't take it away.
I should just show it to them. Okay.
Yeah, show it to them. Because you can't take it away.
Okay.
Adom Online reported that police preliminary investigation suggests Mr. Ewusi authorized the release of the excavators parked at this yard.
So upon arresting the yard owner, any catcher and say a cover we see now some machines. So we proceed and a fire call soon the other guys near Duoma police station.
He's currently undergoing interrogation at the CID headquarters in Accra over his role in some mason excavators and other equipment seized from illegal mining operators. His arrest follows a request by the Minister of Environment, Science and Technology, Professor Frimpong Boateng.
In total, right now we have about 140 or so in our custody.
140?
Yes.
After the first year where the then Minister for Land and Natural Resources, John Peter Amewo, was going around, in 1 year we had about 500 seized.
No, that was not the case. We were told that 500 had been seized and given to the district assemblies and so on.
Because that was the official figure put out at the time.
But later on, when we went out to check, the number was far lower than that.
What was the number at the time?
I can't tell exactly what, but it was far lower than the 500 that was initially declared. We sent people out there to talk to the district assembly, and we got Vanguard involved, and most of them had disappeared.
Most had disappeared.
Yes.
According to the minister, Mr. Ewuzi was contracted to cut excavators and other vehicles and pieces of equipment seized by Operation Vanguard to designated areas for safekeeping. Professor Watson said the ministry had received information that he sent an unknown number of equipments to unauthorized locations, including one in Tema.
Right. So that's a JoyNews report cataloging a number of things that have led us up to this point, and certainly not a very good story to tell. But yesterday, Valentine's Day, the Daily Guide reported that some 14 Chinese nationals have been arrested. They were doing galamsey. Where were they doing it? In the Western region. They were arrested by the Operation Vanguard team. And where exactly were they doing the galamsey? They were doing it in the forests, Wasa Dunkwa, near Asankregoa. They were doing it in the forest. So your forest reserve is at a risk. Guess what? Just by that arrest only, they also seized as many as 15 excavators. 15 excavators in one arrest. Well, Kofi, I'd like to start with you here. And do you think that the state is doing enough? And for those of you who think we may be doing this issue too much, you may want to familiarize yourself with your constitution. In Article 36. Article 36, Clause 9 says that the state shall take appropriate measures needed to protect and safeguard the national environment for posterity. For posterity. And beyond that, the Constitution also gives citizens a duty to do. In Article 41K, it says we have a duty as citizens to protect and safeguard the environment. Are we doing this?
As citizens, I think we are. And sometimes I feel ordinary citizens like yourself, myself, you know, people who have been engaged in this, groups like Occupy Ghana, Citizen Ghana Movement, we have day jobs. You know, we have, you know, families to feed and we need to earn our salary, but we have to take a lot of time of what we normally do to press people who are paid to do these things. You know, look at the work Ken and Co have done, Kanashigwe and Co have done. So if you ask, are citizens doing enough? Sometimes we are doing maybe more than we should be doing, and that tells you that maybe the state is failing. We could do more, we should do more. The Constitution requires us to do more. But we need to get to the point where we can trust the people we put in government and the people we put in office and the people we resource to do the work that they have accepted to do. Nobody begs anybody to run for public office. And too much of that happens in this country where citizen groups, citizens have to get up and push people to do what they have to do. And this galamsey thing is really one of those sad examples. It reveals...
You were here 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you said there's no commitment to it. And that galamsey is funding politics. And that's the biggest problem.
And since I said that, you see what has happened. Okay, exactly that has come out. And sometimes it's not everything we can see at the table, but we know what we know, okay? And I worry that it is true. I worry about the evidence that has come up since last 2 weeks. Galamsey reveals maybe what is worst about the way we run this country. We do things that are killing us. Look, Ghana Water is shutting down plants. And by the way, I support them on that. You see, let me tell you why I support them. I think we must get to the point where galamsey starts biting ordinary people directly. Then we'll have a mass revolt. It shouldn't be so. I mean, no government wants to have that arrangement. But if you have a situation where people in a particular locality or so cannot get water, they will charge and start taking the law into their own hands and driving out these galamsey people. Now, must it come to that? No. But if you get to the point where there's nothing else that you can do, then citizens are going to take things in their own hands. So galamsey reveals what is very wrong about sometimes how we run the country. Government seems to be doing a lot about it. When you look beyond the surface, you realize that the people who are supposed to be working on a thing are actually profiting from the mess. Okay? And you look at the problem, ordinarily it should not be a problem that is difficult to solve. Excavators getting missing. Heavy equipment, you can't move them by themselves. And they get missing. You go beyond the surface, then the people who are supposed to do the work are the ones committing the crime. So for me, Galamsey reveals what is wrong about the country. It is not impossible to solve. It just happens to be a situation where the state has failed, and has failed not because the state is incapable, but the persons we have entrusted to do the work are themselves the culprits.
So you refer to the Ghana Water being compelled to shut down some of its treatment plants, and we have heard some of those stories previously, but even yesterday, there was also the report from the Ashanti region where the Ghana Water Company there has warned that its treatment plants at Odaso could soon be shut down if urgent measures are not taken to prevent illegal miners from polluting the Odaso River. And that's according to the quality assurance manager in that area. So you're saying what? Perhaps we should wait and see how some of these shutdowns happen, and we get the bites. Then we will act. Is that what you said?
No, I'm saying I hope it doesn't come to that. But we are now there. We are at a point where the water coming into the treatment plant is so muddy. If you allow it into the treatment systems, it will spoil the thing. So there's no way out than to shut it down. And I'm saying, when these things start happening, then citizens will feel the direct bite. Unfortunately, if it comes to that, you would have people take the law into their own hands. In the past, we had Asafo groups. Asafo groups were community-based militias, and they protect the community. If you have that situation and the state is failing, they will come back. And they will go into the bush and start taking the law into their own hands, because now you are affecting their water. Now, the state exists to prevent that. But if the state fails so consistently over a long time, then like you and I and Ken Ashigbe and the journalists and CGM, and we now have to stop what we are doing and come and push politicians to go and do what they are paid to do. And I'm saying it reveals how we run this country. And it is not because it cannot be done. It is because some of the people who are supposed to do it are criminals. And they are the ones committing the crimes. So we need to start pushing our governments even more, unfortunately.
Talk about some of the people involved in the issue of particularly what you stated profoundly, 2 weeks ago, and right after that, in the course of that week, the things that, the revelations that came out. When you listen to what happened about, the ECOC, we are told he's a suspended first vice chairman of the party in that region, that the conversation recorded that we have become aware of. Do you really believe him, or you would rather believe the explanation that have come forth, that when he says they mobilized money out of all of these things and dumped it at the good professor's, desk, and also that there was an arrangement, and the professor seemed to be heard to be confirming that he had asked for a committee to be set up, which was supposed to lead to a process to generate money to support or for party activity. Do you really believe that story, or you would rather believe the explanation that what they meant was for small-scale legal mining activities to generate money for the party's activities and not to go into illegal mining?
So you have a person under pressure who may feel like he's been scapegoated.
Right.
He feels we all did this and now there's trouble and you are leaving me, out to dry. When a person is under that kind of pressure, it is not wise to believe everything they say, because you should assume that they are trying to also implicate other people and say things to get themselves off the hook. But under this circumstance, it is also not wise to totally disbelieve what they are saying. And the guy brought the receipts. He gave us recordings. So if you ask me, do I believe him? I will be a fool to believe entirely everything he's saying. And I'll be a fool not to believe everything he's saying.
So specific. will you be wise to believe the statement he made in the presence of the professor that you tasked me to set up a committee? I did that committee and we have been working. And the professor asked a question. Did you report back to me that you have actually formed this committee? I am unaware that you have formed the committee. Does that tell you that he indeed had tasked him to set up a committee?
What it tells me is that something worrying has happened. And you and I know, especially because we are lawyers, that you don't take the prima facie situation. That is why there are investigations. So again, I don't disbelieve him, but it does not mean I believe him.
Okay.
And there are details about that which are worrying. And again, it must be investigated. I don't see a certain edge to get to the bottom of it. And that worries me.
There's been explanation, and I was asking whether you believe that one too. That when you said they were going to somebody's concession, Wuntumi's concession, the Ashanti Regional Chairman's concession, to do work, in the tape, the suggestion and the interpretation in the public had been that they were going to do galamsey to generate money to support the party. But the explanation is that Wuntumi already has legitimately acquired concession. So they were going there to do legal mining.
So the point is, it is possible he is right and what he's saying is true. It is possible the details will show something different. What I am sure of is that it requires some further investigation. And I worry about whether there is the sense of urgency to go into the detail. What I am trying to put out here on this very, very important platform is that we should not just believe people under pressure who say things and implicate other people, but we will be fools to totally discard and disregard everything they are saying. Like we've said on this platform, this galamsey thing is killing us. Look, there's poison in our water. And when I say our water, I'm talking not about you and I who can buy bottled water. There are vulnerable people who don't have a choice, and they have to drink this stuff. All right? And when I get to that point, and people are making millions of it.
The bottled water, I may not be able to afford once the ECG has to import the water.
Well,
because that's the caution they are giving, that in the next 10 years or so, and it does look like it might come a little early if we are not careful, that we'll have to import water.
I get very worked up, okay? When those of us who have been educated with poor people's money, and I don't have time to go into it, but every cocoa farmer pays for education in this country, okay? And some people don't have the privilege of getting through that. Then we constitute ourselves into a brigade to damage them in every way possible. When we take national resources and waste them, steal them, and then the little they have, the little one, the poverty in the hinterlands is terrible. The small water they have to drink, it's not even treated. You go and in trying to make money from it, you pollute it. Okay, so look, it's bad, and the people we have appointed to deal with it are the people making it worse.
What sort of accounting would you require from the interministerial committee if you don't agree with those who are suggesting it should be shut down immediately, dissolved, and Professor Boateng and all, they should just stop whatever they are doing, and the president perhaps reevaluate and look at a new strategy to go forward? What sort of accounting would you expect? Because there's a lot that is going on that we don't have the full facts, because that's what we are told all the time, that we are dealing with bits and pieces of facts. What sort of accounting should we expect?
The same state will have to do that accounting. I will take it from a totally different arrangement. And I've said it before, I repeat. The district chief executive is the head of the district security committee and the head of this district mining committee or something like that. Every galamsey happens in a district, okay? If you ask people now to go and investigate, and note that we've done that from every time we form some group to go and investigate or a task force or bringing. Let's make a simple rule and let's hold the politicians to it. If you are found, or if galamsey is found in your district, a slew of people, district chief executive and a number of people lose their jobs, and then we go after them. Let's have the police take care of it as a civil criminal matter, okay? Something which is a crime happening within the civilian population, so that we don't apply. I have advocated for the army to go in before, But we had the same problem. So let's treat it properly. But this thing about people having to pay for it, okay, and possibly let us start involving the locals in policing their own environment, okay? But I think that when people have to pay a heavy price for not doing their job as district chief executive, etc., that would be the start. And we can take it from there.
In 1 minute, what I really wanted to find out from part of the accounting process, should the president who set up this, you know, Operation Vanguard or Professor Frimpong Boateng be made to account to the entire nation what he has done so far, how much of our taxpayers' money has gone into this process, and the problems that have come up with it, the successes, and so on and so forth. Should there be that kind of accounting? The police, recently, because some politicians' matters was involved, they gave us, you know, a release about how many people they had arrested, 6. They don't really do that.
Samson, I understand you perfectly, and I didn't want to go there because it brings another angle. In all of these things, when we say the executive which has to do the work has failed, that is the single reason why Parliament exists. And in all of these things, we've not had Parliament. And it's politicians who are there, it's elected people. The accounting you are talking about must happen in Parliament. And I feel pained that they have not seen it fit. Look, it should be possible for a report to be made to Parliament every quarter. It should be possible for Parliament to establish a committee to go and check on the report. If it is serious, let us treat it as if it is. That kind of accounting should not be within the executive. If Parliament is minded to, and I'm very disappointed they are not seeming to do that, they should require of the Minister of Interior to give them a report every quarter.
Okay. John, you in your, you know, public, you called it public dialogue series, said that this government has turned a surgeon into a galamsey man. Is that the representation for you of what the fight has become?
Thank you, Samson, and good morning to everyone. First of all, this is a major issue for the country, and I believe that because of the importance you attach to that, that's why we consistently, and I've realized that Joy FM and the multimedia group has consistently be at the forefront of the fight against the landscape. And I think that you ought to be commended. You've done a very good job. Even when we were in office, you held us to accountability, and you insisted that the right thing ought to be done.
The Constitution requires we do so.
Yes, but some people have read the Constitution, some people are lawyers, and yet they are doing what is illegal and what is proper.
Okay.
So if people like
I understand we have a little problem with your microphone.
Okay.
So we'll get John's microphone fixed, and then we'll return to him. Yes, so Dr. Boako, in recent times, we have even heard people within the presidency suggest that Professor Frimpong Boateng should be sacked. His committee should be dissolved because he has failed. What does that tell you of what is going on?
Well, I think the issue about the galamsey is a national issue. And that's what informed the president in 2017, early in his leadership, to forcefully come out to fight the menace of galamsey. Of course, in such an enterprise, so much resources have been pumped into it, but I dare say that the issue of dealing with the galamsey should not be seen as a cost matter. It should rather be seen as when you decide not to do anything, what happens. Before this fight started during President Kufuor's time, previous governments had made attempts, but to no avail, and mining has been with us for quite a long time. And we cannot say as a country that we also not allow people to mine. But of course, we need to manage the negative externalities that are associated with the mining. And so we've had problems with our water bodies, and today we have seen the threat coming from the Ghana Water Company Limited, that if we are not able to protect our forest and the water bodies, a time is coming where we'll find it difficult to get water to drink. And Mr. Kofi Annan of blessed memory had earlier said that the next world war could be fought on water shortages and not on any other thing. So the problems are dire, but we needed pragmatic and bold decisions to be made in this fight. And I think President Kufuor rightly hit the nail on the head. And I must commend civil society, the media, and the entirety of the Ghanaian people for the support and the commitment they showed towards that gesture by the president. So the president was quite clear, and he's still quite clear in his mind, that we need to fight this menace of Galamsey. Of course, during the fight of Galamsey, a lot of policy measures were taken, including the activities of the Interministerial Mining Committee. And we wouldn't say that it has been a total failure, because along the line we saw pictures and videos of water bodies that more or less were turning to be clearer. And all those went to complement the fact that, or to enforce the fact that the fight is gaining or yielding some good results. The fight also has been able to reduce the rate of people dying in Galamsey pits. Today you don't hear of such news. It means that there was an effort, and the effort kind of had some effect on the people and society by and large. Recently, we have been confronted with the issue of excavators and whether or not the excavators are missing, they are lost, or they are stolen. You see, when you are dealing with the issue of missing or lost or stolen excavators, for want of a better word, we ought to be very careful, and I appreciate the kind of discourses we've been having in this country, except for a few political issues that have been brought on board. It is not so easy to say that an excavator has been lost. Excavator is not a pen. It's not like a pen. It is a machine of, substantial size. And the movement of it, thereof, cannot just be something that can be done clandestinely without anybody noticing. What I've been told, and I stand to be corrected in all of this, is that at a certain point in the work of the Interministerial Committee, they realized that excavators that were seized or, say, impounded were finding their way back to the owners of those excavators, because we also have issue with limiting capacity in terms of resources and the movement of the excavators when you seize them. So task force will go to their site, seize the excavators. Sometimes they don't even have the low bed machines to carry or convey the excavators to the point where they want them to go. The best they could do was to dismantle some part of the machine, thinking that with that, nobody will be able to move the machine. They leave the forest, and the owners of the machines go back, find a way to get whatever machine that was taken from the whole excavator, and then drive the excavator back. And so you can't find them. And
that may be one side of it.
That may be one side of it.
But from those that we pay to do this job for this country, they have told us excavators have gone missing.
That is it.
And how they went missing. Those who were charged to transport the excavators from the sites to where they were supposed to keep them in custody, they got missing during in transit. So we have heard those stories as well.
So all said and done, we have been confronted with the issue of missing excavators. There's an issue of how many excavators that have been missing. I've heard people say 500. I don't know where that figure is coming from.
Says it's less.
Yeah. And so the 500 is thrown out there. But I can say that the number of excavators missing, we haven't had any official communication that says that indeed 500 excavators have been missing. And so that statement or that assertion cannot be taken hook, line, and sinker, that we have 500 excavators missing. It is only when investigations have been conducted and we are certified that we can say that. Then
why can't they tell us simply that this is the number of excavators we have at the place of custody? By August of 2018, they have seized as many as 600 of them. So they should be able to tell us clearly that this is the number we have here, and this is the other number we may have given back because we seized them wrongly, or a court has ordered that we should return them. But in the absence of that, once the concerned small-scale miners give us the facts, who were part of the processes in seizing them, we ought to go ahead with what they say.
Samson, I wouldn't want to debate so much on that. I think it's a duty and a responsibility that somebody must exercise, and I think the right path is being taken.
You For me, some of the owners complain that some people have gotten theirs back after paying some bribes of sort to people who were to man the places or the garages where they were kept. And those people have been linked to the Ekowusi guy. And Professor Frimpong Boateng has written a letter to the police asking them to arrest a journalist, a Peace FM journalist, for allowing his bank accounts, to be used to receive those payments.
Much as I wouldn't want to disbelieve such practical accounts coming from people who feel affected by this whole thing.
You want to disbelieve the account from Professor Frimpong Boateng?
I will only say that we must, approach this with some bit of caution.
No, you put him in charge, and he's doing the job, and so he is telling the police that these people have done this, and he wants the police to arrest them, and you have some doubts about it.
And I'm not having doubts. I mean, that shows the commitment of government in fighting whatever, call it corruption within this whole enterprise.
All right.
Because this investigation by the CID or the police was commissioned, or let's say it was at the instigation by a minister of the state, who was appointed by the president. What does it tell you? All that it tells you is that President Akufo-Addo is prepared to fight Galamsey. In fighting Galamsey, if any of his appointees or assigns is identified or seen to be engaged in an act that contravenes the law, the president will deal with that person heads on. That's exactly what the minister has done. It is government that has gotten the police and the CID to investigate this matter. And government may have some prima facie evidence upon which he decided to present the case to the police. But until the police or the CID is conclusive with the investigation and establishes that indeed SYZ is culpable for this offense, all of us can only speak based on our own conjectures, our own intuitive analysis of what has happened. And like you lawyers say, we always have to be careful not to, pass judgment on people until the right thing is done. And so I would say, beyond the talks and everything, government, the president has shown the commitment that indeed I'm not relenting in this fight against Galamsey. I'm still pursuing the fight against Galamsey. But if anybody has any evidence that will support the investigation by the police and the CID, let us all help. Because look, if somebody is in government or an assigned of government gets himself involved in any of these acts, one, it does not just go to discredit the government, but it is also an act that must not be tolerated in society. And if you look at the efforts that were put into this whole Galamsey fight, we must also not lose sight of the successes that are coming out. Because hitherto, we had problems with licensing of people who were interested to go into mining. We had problems with state institutions and agencies that were not capacitated enough to deal squarely with problems associated with mining. And we had problems with the bureaucracy and the issues of licenses and related permits. Today, through the efforts of the committee that was set by the president and the yeoman's job that they have done, we've been able to set up about 80 district mining committees that have been formed across the country to ensure that Ghanaian people, indigenes of this state, who have the willingness and the commitment and the passion to go into mining, are duly assessed, processed, and given the licenses and the permit to go into mining in a regulated manner. That is something that we have to avert our minds to, because we haven't finished with the fight. But anything that comes along with the fight, negative and positive, we must know how to deal with them. We have about 4,500 miners who have been trained in sustainable mining. We didn't used to have that, or even if we had that, it was not done at a scale that we are seeing today. Today, through the efforts of the community mining, We have people who are forming cooperatives in communities and giving licenses to go and mine. There are excesses of that. And the graph exterior of what is associated with this whole enterprise should not be made to overcome the positives that are coming out of it. And so I think that we are in a fight together. We shouldn't live and put our hands in despair. We must just soldier on and make sure we succeed in this particular fight. But I want to commend government and the president that indeed they are not seeking, the president is not seeking to shield anybody. And I can show you for that.
Right.
And the president said he can even put his government on the line.
Professor Boateng and also the government for all the successes and the fact that even the investigations are initiated by him and the president will be aware. Is the president also not aware that it might be an abuse of his office if the allegations that have not been repudiated stand, that he is tasked with this job, then whilst he's doing that job, he's giving concessions for purposes of mining to get money to fund the party?
That part of the story cannot be taken hook, line, and sinker as was presented. Because if I listen to the audio or the video that I think you have seen, there is a conversation. And then somebody makes a suggestion to the good professor that we need to design a framework to get people who are in government or who belong to the party in government who are minors originally. Somebody like Untumi. Untumi, more or less, was having the largest concession as a Ghanaian in the country during the era of Mr. Mahama. He was mining. So it is not today that Untumi started mining. And so if Untumi has a genuine license and concession and somebody makes an attempt to approach him and say that, oh, this business that you are doing, you are a party chairman, try to help us support the party in one way or the other. I'm not saying that was the case. If that is the discussion, then we have to look at it from that angle and not be seen as somebody who has been given mining concession and he was not mining before and he has had that by virtue of him being in the party that is in government.
Did you also get the impression at least that excavators being the issue of discussion were the ones that were supposed now to be diverted, those seized, to be used for the purposes of the mining to make the money?
Once again, was there anything like that? Did it happen? That is the question we have to ask ourselves. Because
he said he tasked them to set up a committee. And he said they have set up the committee and they have started work already. He refers to money that has been brought to him.
And the professor
says it's part of that.
And the professor denied that.
He denies the part of the money. But he says that you didn't tell me you have already set up the committee. You didn't tell me. I asked you to do a committee. You didn't tell me you already set it up.
So the professor says that you came to have this discussion with me. We agreed on the broader framework. But as to the implementation, I have not been apprised of what has happened there.
At a time when he's tasked to cleanse the system?
I think that all of that will be part of the police investigation. Okay. And so I think that is why I support the idea that government has decided to resort to police investigation
let's
and
hear
CID
John
investigation.
Now. And the letter I was referring to is one written on the February 5, 2020, and it's to the Director General of the CID headquarters, and is by Professor Frimpong Boateng, Minister and Chairman of the Interministerial Committee. And it says, request for investigations. In October last year, one Mr. Seth Mante, a journalist working with Peace FM, was apprehended because of unlawful excavator sales. Note that, unlawful excavator sales. Okay. In the course of the investigations, Mr. Mante confessed that he was contracted by Mr. John Ofori-Atta, then National Security Coordinator for the Central Region, and Mr. Eko Ewusi, who we know has been arrested now. Is it John too was part of those who were arrested in the list? I'll check that list again that the police gave us. To use his bank account at the National Investment Bank for what effectively was money laundering. The proceeds from the excavator sales were lodged in Seth Mante's bank account. The monies lodged were later cashed and given to Mr. John Ofori-Atta, who in turn gave some of the money to Eko Ewusi. Seth Mante's statement And statements from the National Investment Bank are attached to this letter. I wish to appeal to the police authorities to investigate the matter. Yours sincerely, Professor Frimpong, Kwabena Frimpong Boateng. And we have seen the bank statements, and we have seen the huge lodgements, deposits that were made by a certain lady who also has been linked, associated with this, group. And we are told that Mr. Usi actually set up an office in Accra, which he was using to do this job. So, John, back to my question about your statement seeking to indict Professor Boateng and literally also joining the chorus that of the part of the chorus that he should lose his job because of this.
Thank you very much, Samson. I think that there's some level of consistency that all of us must try to adhere to. It is true that the president put his job on the line in as far as this Galamsey fight is concerned. He was very categorical that he was putting his job on the line. He made a categorical statement that his government will succeed in fighting these menace. Indeed, one of the reasons he gave for appointing more than 120 ministers had to do with the issue of Galamsey. Subsequently, you do recall that a task force was formed. And you would remember that a very fine soldier lost his life as a result of the fight against this menace. We lost a military officer. And so it's a big issue. It's an issue that should concern all of us. And so when we are dealing with these issues, we should be very, very honest, sincere, and deal with the issues frontally. And I'm happy that we'll be getting to the Vice President's statement soon. I refer you to my Joy Online, where the minister responsible for lands makes a categorical statement at the end of last year that they had succeeded in achieving 85% success with the fight against Galamsey. And this is consistent with the NPP. And I'm happy that Gideon will be dealing with it, because if you just come and bundle a figure around that you've achieved this success rate, there should be a baseline. There should be some assumption. How did you arrive at that? So that all of us can interrogate that so-called achievement of 85%. You and I, and viewers and listeners, would attest to the fact that this 85% so-called achievement is nothing to write home about. And that based on what is happening, you cannot claim to have achieved 85% success in the fight against Galamsey. Today, water bodies are threatened. Treatment plants are being shut down. And you say, I don't have any confidence in Professor Frimpong Boateng fighting this menace. Because from what I have listened, from what I have observed, and from the documents I have read, he has an interest and he's complicit in this matter. There's a clear case of a conflict of interest. And this tape you were talking about, don't create the impression that he denied knowledge of the task force. His problem was that after forming the task force and proceeding with your activities, have you been briefing me? It's not about whether he authorized them to form a task force or not. 2, he claimed to have contracted the Kowusi to cut the excavators. It's a government business. How was the contract entered into? Did it go to PPA? Did he follow procurement processes? What are the terms and conditions of the contract? 3, some of the excavators are alleged to have been sold. How were they sold? Were they sold in accordance with law? And so you cannot trust these people to handle this matter. They are deep in it and they are complicit. And so look, this is a serious matter. And with your...
In as much as, the excesses will always lead in the media, the journalism principle is that when it bleeds, it leads. You will not be oblivious of the success stories. When the Association of Small-Scale Miners, they have been here. And we have seen also the documentation at the lifting of the ban on small-scale mining, how they had been able to stop, largely successful at stopping Galamsey across the country, and then training the people, giving them the skills to be able to do responsible legal mining. People in excess of 4,000, we have been told of those stories. I'm sure you are not discounting all of that.
Listen, you can hear all kinds of stories from the Wuntumis. The bottom line is the net effect and the outturn and the outcome. The success story is that water bodies are being threatened today. Treatment plants are on the verge of being shut down because the situation is exacerbated and is getting worse. That is the outcome. Today you just mentioned that 14 Chinese have been arrested. I was just referring to Asafumaf. When Aisha 1 was arrested and clandestinely released, do you know what he told us? He said it wouldn't bring food on our plate. It won't make us happier. It wouldn't put money in our pocket. This is the #1 minister, the senior most minister in President Akufo-Addo's government. This is what he told Ghanaians. And President Akufo-Addo found it, he couldn't find it even necessary to reprimand him. That it won't bring food on our plates. It wouldn't make us happier. What message does that send? So today you are not just arresting one Aisha 1. You are finding out that 14 of them are there. Operating 50. Why? Look, this government has no commitment when it comes to the fight against galamsey. Look, I listened to Professor Frimpong Boateng. They asked him a specific question. How many excavators were seized? He could not answer that. The minister doesn't even know how many excavators have been seized. If you don't know how many have been seized, how do you determine how many are lost? It's only when you know the number of excavators confiscated or seized, then you can determine how many excavators are lost. He doesn't even know. And I heard him saying that they gave them to district assemblies. On whose authority?
Maybe we need him to say he doesn't know the number. Otherwise, as a journalist, relying on the documents that they provided to us, at the time they were lifting the ban and telling the success stories of what they had done so far, they clearly captured a figure of how many they have seized.
600, right?
They
600.
captured how many have been taken out of galamsey.
That is it.
They captured how many had been trained through the help of the University of Mines and all of that.
That is true. And so he's quick to say that he's below 500. Because in their narration, a certain 500 has been bandied around. So their main interest and their main concern is to fight and bring that 500 down.
Kofi Benton raised the issue. You are our representatives in Parliament.
I'm coming there.
You are supposed to be an oversight on the cabinet.
Kofi, I'll give you parliamentary records of the Speaker himself leading the fight against galamsey.
How?
Of Parliament asking the minister questions on the floor. And what else do you want Parliament to do apart from holding the executive accountable? Tell us. Parliamentarians have visited the sites to inspect the sites and complain, raise the issues with the executive. What else do you want the People's Assembly to do?
At least use your power in the Constitution, pass a vote of censure on the minister, and let the president decide not to act on it to dismiss them.
How do you do that? Please, Parliament operates within a certain framework.
If you are angry enough,
we don't
use the
control
powers.
the press. We don't control the police. We don't control the military. We don't have the powers of the state in terms of enforcing. It is the executive. The duty of, look, do not let us attempt to shift the blame. When we were in power, we never had Parliament.
Yeah, well, you have a responsibility.
It was, yes, so it is your responsibility as a government. When we were in power and you were criticizing President Mahama, when President Akufo-Addo went to Obuasi and mounted the platform and was criticizing President Mahama, he knew that there was a Parliament.
So is it payback or objective
It's not
analysis?
payback. It's a failure on your part as a government. And you must admit that you have failed as a government. In opposition, you had all the answers to our problems. In government today, you turn out to be the problem of Ghanaians.
We are talking about you
now. That is the challenge.
We are
and
talking
I've told
about
you what
you
we
now.
have done.
And more particularly also, John, because you are also in opposition. You see, Ghanaians understand that opposition is very important. You need to be responsible and keep the government on its toes. You need to check it. So have you checked that responsibility then?
Never, and not in the least. We have lived up to our responsibility. We have raised the issues.
We have brought it on the floor of Parliament. We've made statements. We have filed questions. We've met ministers. We've traveled to the Galamsey sites. In any case, how different is my work from any other Ghanaian? My job as an MP is what I do in Parliament. And I'm listing and enumerating what I have been able to do.
You have oversight.
If there's any other thing.
Your job is far different.
Certainly, even as I speak to you, Suhini has filed a motion on the floor of Parliament that the minister must be summoned and censured. That is the job of the minority. We have lived up to our expectation, and we demand, we deserve commendation rather than condemnation.
There are parliamentarians over those areas where the Galamsey is happening. What have they done? And if the minister comes to Parliament and tells you stories which are not true or are not accurate, you should be able to check them and call him to book, even publicize. Recently, people were ordered to be arrested from Parliament, which skirted the law. But some of us said, well, where it's gotten to, a bit of allowance has to be given. If this is serious enough, what are the parliamentarians involved?
Can I make my point now?
No, but if you can answer this.
Yeah, I'll answer
because I expect a bit more agency to this.
Every answer to this.
Very well.
I have made it abundantly clear to you, and even mentioned the name of Honorable Suhini, having filed a motion before the Speaker to summon the minister and censor him. We have done our part.
When will that motion be moved?
It's only when the Speaker admits it.
He hasn't.
If the Speaker does not admit it, we cannot do anything.
Well, you say this Speaker too has been campaigning against it, so
it's
we
left,
hope that he doesn't
it's left
turn a blind eye.
To push for the Speaker to admit that. We have done what a responsible opposition or a minority ought to do.
Okay.
The rest with the Speaker.
You have had press conferences not on Galamsey.
We have. I can give you some references, and I'll pull them out.
That's fine.
We've had several press conferences on Galamsey. Our ranking member has even asked for the dismissal of the minister. Has he not done that? Is that not the job of a minority? The first responsibility rests with the president. Read the Constitution, Article 2576 or 2576. All mineral resources are vested in trust in the hands of the president. The president has the first and ultimate responsibility to act. It's an issue of a failure of leadership on the part of the president. And let's put it squarely where it belongs. The president has failed.
Interesting.
That is a fact.
Okay, so
there's no doubt about this.
Okay, so
you want to debate this one?
But you know what you're saying.
Okay, so you don't believe that? You believe it yourself.
You know the effort
but you will say that on air. You believe that the president has failed.
As far as I know, has been so forceful in the fight against the
I think that is without doubt.
Yeah, you know that.
But people,
in terms of the commitment of the president, it is second
people
to none.
want to measure this by the results and not the efforts.
I agree. Right. I agree, and we are seeing some results. Of course, there will be some skirmishes here.
So, Dr. Texan, I don't know if you can take it from here. The 14 illegal miners that were arrested yesterday and 15 excavators seized from them. If you read the Daily Guide story, it says that they were transported from where they were and brought to the IMCM. What's its name? The Interministerial Committee on Mining. What would be your first expectation? Should they have been matched to the police for the purposes of prosecution, where they are looking to as many as 20, 25 years in jail?
What has that been the issue?
Yeah, I mean, I agree totally with the submissions that Kofi did earlier on, and I think that, in fact, during the time when this whole thing was going on and the president had clearly committed that he was going to end this, I happened to travel to Samabua, which is around the area where these Chinese were arrested, and it was going on. I mean, I won't say it was a failure on the part of government, but I think that the extent to which Galamsey was growing the economy, the fact that we had limited resources to fight was going to mean that there were certain areas that the security men were not able to get there, and Galamsey was going to go on. What is refreshing is that ever since these issues came up in the last few weeks, there's a renewed attempt to go to other areas, and then, so it's refreshing to note that these Chinese have been arrested. But something, I mean, I've heard over and over people being arrested, but it looks like people don't get prosecuted for what they do. And that is the reason why you have audience go back
repurchase or pay bribes to get back their equipment and go back to do what they are doing.
And maybe the police should issue a statement on this 14 who have been arrested too. They are not used to issuing statement when people involved in Galamsey are arrested. But when politicians were involved, they issued a statement.
Exactly. So,
and they should be updating us as to what they have done after they gave us a statement about
and
the
we should
arrest.
see these people being sent to court and some being jailed. I mean, if we do not have a system that is punishing those who are doing this and to serve as a deterrent, people will do it with all the impunity that is happening now.
I think the Deputy Lands Minister recently went round and we showed him on TV where places where they thought they had succeeded, they went and the people are back. And they are back with same heavy machines.
So that's the point I'm making. So what happened when you are arrested? I mean, do we only pursue them and seize their equipment?
I was asking the question to ask about us. We, as citizens also, what role are we refusing to play? The government's team or the Operation Vanguard went to the place, cleared the place of Galamsey people. Then, after how many months, the minister went back there and they are back there working.
I mean, so it's the same point I'm making that. So the first time we got there and we see the equipment, what happened to those who were doing it? Did we arrest them? Did we send them to, do we take them to court? Were they jailed?
Professor Boateng says they were granted bail, and once they are granted bail, they still find themselves back to
I think our law courts should treat this as a national security priority, and when these issues come up, they should deal with it instantly and let us have people being jailed. Not until people are jailed and those who want to do this with impunity know that, look, if I'm in trouble, I'm going to jail. People still do this because it comes with a lot of money.
Yeah.
People make money out of that.
Briefly about that, there are people who have suggested that perhaps to underscore how seriously the nation takes this, we should have a dedicated court where these trials will happen every day and not the usual lethargic thing you find around the courts.
Yeah. I have thought about that, and I say if it is serious, we should treat it as it is. Now, I think that, like you're saying, it's curious that nobody gets prosecuted or jailed. But the courts, for instance, are passive. You have to send something there. So I don't think that even in the existing arrangement, if these cases are sent to court and the police approach the judicial system, I have no doubt that our judges will give it priority. So it's a process. There's a value chain.
But you don't agree that best way, dedicate one court or two,
I agree.
And let them deal with this on a daily basis.
I agree, but would that court be in Kumasi, Tamale, or Accra?
It doesn't matter. Wherever you're arrested, we bring you to Accra. It's at your cost.
What I'm saying is that even if a court is not dedicated, what is important, I think, is one, I'm rather thinking we should have a dedicated police force or a force. When they are arrested, you know, when these things are seized, they are sent to the MCIM or so. I think there must be a police team dealing with this. You are arrested, you are sent there, and there's a process, okay, that sends you through the courts. I agree with...
Already the law says when you arrest them, the excavators, you keep it as evidence of crime and keep it with the police. We have breached that. We are not keeping it with the police.
That is what I'm hoping should be enforced. And we have a police. I am not too sure why what is going on in the police is going on, but what you are saying is to the effect that they should be sent to court. And I'm saying somebody must send them to the court.
Right.
You arrest them straight into that court system. Yes, if we have to set up a different court, so be it. But I'm saying, even without a court being called Galamsey Court, I believe that with an arrangement with the judiciary today, if we say, look, let's treat Galamsey cases special, they will.
Okay. All right, so proceed.
So like I was saying, I mean, I feel so sorry for the president. This is a president who, when he assumed office, put his
presidency on the
line, said, look, I was going to fight Galamsey and then win the fight against Galamsey. But from the stories that we are hearing over the last few weeks, it looks like those appointees that were supposed to support the government, especially the president in his desire to end Galamsey.
So wait, this is important because as I was asking that question about dedicating courts, I remembered an encounter with the Chief Justice for some of these things to be done. And the Chief Justice apparently had dedicated 14 courts. She has said that 14 courts had been dedicated and they will independently handle all cases related to illegal mining that is destroying Ghana's water bodies, vegetation and arable lands. So she said, as an institution committed to rule of law, we are prepared to lend our support to this renewed fight against illegal mining to stamp out the menace and thereby protect the country's natural resources, particularly our water bodies, for the current and future generations. A statement from the judiciary.
And how many cases have gone there?
Said, and this was Justice Georgina Wood. Okay.
And the present Chief Justice, I believe, is very committed to this.
Right. So, question is,
how many cases have gone there?
When the committee itself is complaining about things not happening fast with the courts and things, what is going on? Okay.
Yeah. So like I was saying, I mean, not until people get jailed and people are made to pay for the destruction of our environment, these things will go on, because don't forget that it's an industry that people make a lot of money.
Right. And
people are prepared to go to all ends to make sure that they protect their investment in the illegal activities that they are doing. But for me, it's important. I mean, if you look at our national development goals, I think one of the main goals is to ensure that we protect our natural environment. And I don't think that over the years, Ghana as a country has been able to do that very well. I mean, it's quite clear that there is some level of, what do you call it, political colors to all of these things. I mean, I normally listen to the opposition and it's like, initially I thought when this president started, the whole idea was that we should look at small-scale mining as an avenue to create jobs for these young men and women who have no jobs to do in there. And I quite remember that at a point we criticized the president for moving into this specific area where there were over 2 million jobs that were going to be lost. I think I remember that argument coming up.
Okay.
Now it's the president, I think, should take a relook at the approach. And the reason why I'm saying this, if it's possible, like Kofi is saying, we need to equip the police service to do this.
All right.
I don't think that the efforts that we have in his appointees trying to help out is helping out. And if you look at Usi and Co, who are neck deep in the party and the embarrassment that they have come up with, I don't think that his appointees will help. So then we need to equip the police, the military, and then allow them to do their own work. And then also have the law courts.
Within the Operation Vanguard,
there's a military.
A member has reported one member for receiving in excess of, is it 24,000 bi-monthly? And that is under investigation.
Yeah, I mean,
so who is watching the watchman too?
I mean, this is what happened. I'm saying that if we equip them well and people have, they know that the president is backing them what they are doing, I think that we'll make a headway. This thing is not going to be won in just 4 years.
All right.
It's an enterprise that will take time.
This is also a sign of the watchmen watching themselves.
Okay.
And I think that is also
right. The watchmen watching themselves, and that's important. I think you know, you have a lot to say about what Baumia had to present. So let's preserve the time and proceed to our next issue. But on the Galamsey and Professor Frimpong Boateng's letter to the CID, this is the question we would like Professor Boateng to answer. Number one, you are saying that a certain Seth Mante was arrested and you are directing CID to investigate. Question one, who arrested Seth Mante? If you say that it was discovered that his bank accounts was used to pay monies illegally for excavators, and we have seen the evidence that that is true, who conducted that investigation? You said he confessed to having actually allowed his accounts to be used for that. Who did Seth Mante confess to? It is important to know how come you, the minister, you are the one now writing to the police, asking them to investigate Seth Mante, who has been investigating since October. We need all the answers. Can you tell us how many excavators have been seized so far, as you told us in October 2018, when there were about 600 of them? Can you tell us how many people have been rehabilitated, moved from which Galamsey site, how much it has cost the state to go through all of these things. We'll be right back to find out if it is true that out of the 388 manifesto promises of the NPP, 303 have been delivered, and some of them being delivered. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. We have some difficulty. We'll resolve that and then we'll go on this commercial break that we have to, because this show is paid for. Thank you very much. Okay. That's just an aside. Some people are talking about my gray hair. Okay, yeah. I've had gray hair since before I was even 30. I'm now 45. I'll be 45 in March. You haven't seen my hair. You have seen me Sakura. Now you're seeing my hair. All right, so this show is brought to you by MTN, everywhere you go. Star Assurance, your solid partner. Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. Amen Scientific, God is the healer. Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. In fact, where water goes, there is Duraplast. So let's get to Dr. Bawumia and the economy and the NPP's 388 promises, which he says 303 have been delivered. Then John Jinapor appears to be the one now giving the answer as far as Dr. Bawumia's presentation is concerned. So if you thought that Dr. Bawumia was the NDC's nightmare and that the NDC never had an answer to him, well, it does appear that now you have someone who will be answering him anytime he comes forth. Let's listen to just bits and pieces of what Dr. Bawumia had to say, and then John Jinapor also at the dialogue, which was attended by former President Mahama as well. Let's listen to them. We'll be back.
We made 388 promises in our manifesto. The most recent validation exercise that we undertook at the end of January 2019 shows that we have either delivered or we are delivering on 78% of our promises. We have either delivered or we are delivering on 78% of our promises. Of course, this 78% is an aggregate figure. You can go to the sectoral breakdown, which we provide to show you what we are doing for each sector. How has the city performed under the leadership of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo in the last 3 years? The answer is very simple. You look at this table, which looks at the average rate of depreciation of the city since 1992. Between 1993 and 1996, first term of the Fourth Republic, the average rate of depreciation of the city was 27.95%. 97 to 2000, 25.19%. 2001 to 2004, we drastically reduced it under President Kufuor to 11.4%, and 2005 to 2008, the second term, to 6.7%. 2009 to 2012, 10.9%. Under the NDC government of 2013 to 2016, it was 18%. Under Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, it is, for the first 3 years, 8.7%. So, you see from this table that the city exchange rate under the MPP from 2017 to 2019 is twice as stable as it was under the NDC from 2013 to 2016. The total public debt has increased from 122 billion Ghana cedis in 2016 to 214 billion Ghana cedis, that is 62.2% of GDP at the end of November 2019. But this includes the cost of the banking sector cleanup, which, as you know, is over 13 billion Ghana cedis and counting. Excluding the cost of the banking sector cleanup, the debt stock stands at 203 billion, or 59.1% of GDP. However, if you look at these debt dynamics, the strong fiscal adjustment that has taken place and better debt management has meant that the rate of debt accumulation has slowed down considerably to the lowest in a decade. Between 2008 and 2012, right? The first 2008 and 2012, Ghana's debt stock increased by 267% between 2008 and 2012. Ghana's debt stock increased by 267%. Between 2012 and 2016, Ghana's debt stock increased by another 243%. But between 2016 and 2019, the increase has been by 79%. So there's a big difference. So you look at the graph here, you'll see that if you look at the debt to GDP ratio, for example, the debt to GDP ratio increased by 49% between 2008 to 2012, increased by 19% between 2012 and 2016, and by 3.9% between 2016 and 2019. I would like to say that even though we have made a solid start, and it is a start, in our 3 years in office, we are not yet where we want Ghana to be. We have done a lot. We've established the Zongo Development Fund and all of that. Major things. But we are not yet where we want to be. We still have more to do. This year has been designated by the President as the year of roads, and the country will soon see evidence of this. We have outperformed the NDC in virtually every sphere of the economy. I mean every sphere. We have appropriately combined economic theory as taught in our textbooks with the collective experience of the economic management team and cabinet under the leadership of the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in the management of the economy. Can you imagine, ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant who, after qualifying, decides not to use what they learned in school? Say, forget about everything you learned in the textbooks when you are actually practicing. Can you imagine that? Unfortunately, if you don't take your time and read and understand your textbooks in a subject like economics, you will end up mismanaging the economy with a confirmed economic management techniques. I have no doubt that the NDC will come out and challenge what I have said here today. But when they come out, just ask them to bring contrary data. They shouldn't just talk. They should come with contrary data. You've seen a decrease in electricity prices. We promised to reduce electricity prices. People thought it wasn't possible. I will take you back because sometimes people tell us we have short memories. And we always have to remind ourselves that we will not forget. We will not forget their record. If you look at the record, the data is clear from the table you see. Between 2010 and 2015, in 2010, electricity prices went up in this country by 89%. 2011, 10%. 2012, of course, election year, no electricity price increase. 2013, they gave it to us, 78%. 2014, 23.36, 28.36%. 2015, 59.2%. This is electricity price increases. We promised that we will do a decrease in electricity price increases. Okay? 2016, of course, there was no increase, another election year. But 2017, our first year in government, there was no increase in electricity price. 2018, we reduced electricity prices by 22%. And by the way, this is the first government in the history of the Fourth Republic, first government that has reduced electricity prices. First government. In 2019, we increased the prices by 11%, but when you take the net between 2019 and 2018, in net terms, since we've been in office, we've reduced electricity prices by 10% in net terms. And it has not happened so far for any government in the Fourth Republic. And therefore, it is a promise that we have fulfilled. The question that we faced when we tried to implement this free SHS policy, the question that we faced was, if we don't have enough infrastructure, how can we tell whose child should stay at home and whose child should go to school? Who should stay at home? In response to this challenge, we introduced the innovative double-track system as a temporary solution to the problem while we construct new schools. To allow access to the internet across public tertiary institutions and senior high schools, government has awarded the contract for the provision of free Wi-Fi to all senior high schools and tertiary institutions. There's so much knowledge. There's so much knowledge on the internet, and we have to allow our senior high schools to access that knowledge.
All right, so now let's listen to what the NDC also held, which is the dialogue series. Let's listen to that. There were a few reactions also to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia.
He makes a bold statement that for the first time in the history of this country, it is only the MPP that has reduced electricity tariffs. And you see, yesterday, if you watch him, he makes that statement and he laughs a lot. I watched it. I watched the vice president. Anytime he makes this and peddles this falsehood, then he turns around and laughs. So something came to mind. Is this man thinking that we are not serious as a country or what? Because you cannot say this and then turn around and laugh at us at the same time. At least if you are lying to us, be a little bit serious so that we may think that you are serious. And I entreat you to watch the video again. I have the reckoner, and it's the reckoner that tells you how much you pay. The yellow one is July 2016. The white one is October 2019. Check the prices. Check the 150, check the 100, and check the 300. In July, we reduced electricity tariffs. I do recall that Pakwesi Emisata. I remember in July 2016, may his soul rest in peace, chaired that meeting. I do recall that minority leader was then Minister for Labor. He sat in that meeting. We computed the issues, came out with a realignment, and reduced tariffs to close to about 20%. Today, I am stating on authority that the tariffs are far higher than they inherited. And so when you look at the table, you would realize that our debt level, that is the debt to GDP, not just the nominal debt, the debt to GDP, has moved from about 56% to now 62.25% as a percentage of GDP. Yesterday, Dr. Bawumia was in Kumasi telling us that their debt to GDP is better than us. You inherit a 56%, you raise it to 62.25%, and you have the audacity and the effrontery to stand in Otunfo's Kumasi and tell the people of Ghana that your track record is better than that of John Mahama. I am not surprised, because if the MPP is capable of turning a very fine heart surgeon into a galamsey kingpin, they can equally. Ladies and gentlemen, if the NPP is able to turn a very fine heart surgeon, a very good man, into a galamsey kingpin, they can equally turn an economist into a crack propagandist who engages in galamsey when it comes to statistical issues. Because it doesn't support the fact.
All right, so you heard Dr. Bawumia earlier and you heard John Jinapor, and but for the almost 1 hour or so that John Jinapor also spent, he spoke to substantive matters on factual issues where he refers to data as provided by either the Bank of Ghana, the Ministry of Finance itself, and also the PIAC as well. And among other things, very, very interesting claims that he makes. We'll interrogate some of them, including that some 655, is it million or billion? Cedis. Million cedis is unaccounted for, and he suspects that money has been stolen by this government. He will justify his point to us. That's actually oil money, he claims. And then the NDC's point actually is that this government in the period has received in petroleum receipts in excess of 20 billion cedis. But the NDC under John Mahama, within 4 years, got 6 billion cedis. Whilst John Mahama got 6 billion, he can show what he used the money for. They claim the NPP has got 20 billion cedis and can't show what it used it for. He also stated a fact, we are interrogating all of that this morning, that the energy sector also gave the John Mahama government 3 billion, but it has given this government 12 billion. Says to whom much is given, much is expected, and yet the NPP has nothing to show for as far as infrastructure is concerned. So let's begin with Gideon. Beyond 303 out of the 388, manifesto promises that have been delivered or being delivered, the health of the economy, as the Vice President stated, in the next 5 minutes, tell us, convince everybody else that didn't get convinced by Dr. Bawumia that these represent the facts, that you are better managers of the economy than the NDC did.
Samson, thank you very much. Let me set out to say that the town hall meeting is part of the plans that government has to engage the people of this country. The president, in his wisdom, believes that when people trust you with their power and their resources to manage, you should be able to account to them at certain points in time. And so this town hall meeting is part of the efforts by government to deepen and promote accountable governance, which is an essential part of our democratic ethos. And so for us, we believe that we need to account to the people, give the people the platform to assess us, engage us, and also put the ideas on board, because we cannot be seen to be a repository of knowledge. And so we must listen to the people. This is in sharp contrast to what we witnessed a few years ago when Mr. Mahama was in charge, and when it was put to him that we need to compare government records and manifesto promises. He declined and said that any such attempt can be likened to an exercise in mediocrity. We don't believe in that, and so we felt we needed to give the Ghanaian people the opportunity. The town hall was also an opportunity for the Ghanaian people to assess us, and we put ourselves on the radar that this is it. This is the commitment we made to the people of Ghana. And we believe that although we haven't solved in totality all the problems of the people of this country, for which no government can do in the 4 years, we believe that where we have gotten to, we need to present the facts as they are to Ghanaians for them to also make their own judgment. And that is exactly what the Vice President did. In doing so, we tried to assess the performance of this government in 3 main metrics. The first metric was to state that of all the manifestos promises that we made, the President made in 2016, how many of them have we been able to say, or we can say we have delivered? How many of them are we in the process of delivering that we have not finished? And how many of them, in all honesty and sobriety, have we not been able to touch at all? This is uncommon of so many of governments, and I haven't seen this in our history before, that a government comes to the people and says that assess me based on the promises that I made, where I have to make honest admission that truly I made this commitment 3 years down the line, I've not been able to achieve it or done anything about it, I do so. If you take the metrics that we use, in the first instance of promises delivered, we say that they are promises for which there is a clear, definable life cycle, which have concluded, and all which, though are recurring, its initial implementation can be described as fully delivered. For example, if you take the free senior high school, it is a promise that is although recurrent, because free senior high school, the execution is not final. So we started in 2017, 2018, we continue 2019, we are continuing 2020, we are continuing. But its initial implementation has fully been delivered. And so for that, we describe as delivered. Then we have promises that we have started delivering, but we have not completed. And they include those that we have begun the process to deliver on, but delivery is not yet complete. And a classical example of that is the one district, one factory. We started delivering on some of the factories, we are not yet done. And then the last one is spending. If you put everything together, we are saying to the Ghanaian people that we made about 388 promises in the 2016 manifesto. We have either delivered or in the process of delivering a little over 300 of them. And in percentage terms, that comes to 78. That was the honesty. That was the kind of opportunity we wanted to give to the Ghanaian people to say that here we are, assess us, make your own judgments about what we have done, and then let's look forward to see what we can do again. As part of the presentation, and we can go to the metrics and then the details later on, but as he said, the Vice President made it clear the solid foundation that we have built for this country. One, in terms of the macroeconomy, which serves as the pillar upon which anything else in this country can function. If you have a weaker macro fundamentals, no matter what you do, nothing can be anchored. And so the macro fundamentals are what anchor the economy and put it on a good footing. There is no denying the fact that if you pick Ghana's macroeconomic indicators, which serves as the pillar that hold the economy, upon which we want to enjoy free SHS, upon which we want to have access to good quality hospitals, upon which we want to have access to good water, upon which we want to have good roads. Because look, if you don't have a strong economy that is able to withstand all shocks and pressures and having issues to deal with revenues not coming and all of that, there's no way you can build the roads, you can pay teacher training allowances, you can pay nursing training allowances and do all the things you are doing. The totality of what we have been able to deliver, which hitherto in the years that we came to inherit were not delivered, simply suggests something dramatic has happened to this economy. And I did not bore you with the indicators by going through the one by one. The common consensus across board in the country to international organizations and all bodies is that the macroeconomic fundamentals as inherited by this government have been significantly improved across all spheres. And the Vice President was very succinct when he made that presentation. If we take inflation, where we found it, we brought it to single digits, sustained it. If we take the real GDP growth, which more or less measures the size of the economy and shows more or less it's also the scorecard for the health of this economy, we've been able to increase it from the anemic 3.4% to somewhere around 7%. That is fundamental. That is quite dramatic. If we take the gross international reserves, which serves as the shock absorber to the currency, so that any point that there are shocks, whether exogenous or endogenous, attacking the currency, is able to hold the currency firm and reduce its rate of depreciation, that one has significantly been improved. If we look at trade accounts, fantastic. So all of these box up to give the indication that in terms of the management of the economy, its fundamentals, the indicators that suggest how robust our economy is today, there is none denying the fact that truly this government has delivered on the promise. Okay. Aside this, there are other pieces of the jigsaw that are also being put together and they are coming together, and these are what the Vice President describes as the unwritten rules of the development paradigm. We're talking about the digitization and how this agenda has been able to ease the burdens of the Ghanaian people in so many public services in this country. Okay. If I have the time, I'll go through one after the other.
That's your introduction. We will come back to deal with the issues, you know, in specific perspectives. Sure. Because, for example, when you talk about digitization, I read the area of digitization, and I read about how the courts, you know, is being digitized. And I am a user of the courts, and I know when it began, and I know the process started. It's not something that you should be taking credit for. You may have come to complete it. Okay. Yeah. When he says, when you say this has been delivered, and I went to the delivery.ga.org. When you say you mention an item, you only mention the name of the item and then you say delivered. Or you mention the name of the item and say being or delivering. Or you mention the name of the item and you say pending. What I want to see is to be able to, you know, click on that particular item that you say delivered. Then I can see the list of the deliveries. For example, when you are talking about one district, one factory, you are able to give figures and you're able to tell me where to find which particular factory. But when it's a list and you have delivered, it's difficult for me. You don't agree?
No, Sammy, I mean, you may be right in some part, but in others too, that's not entirely true. So what we have done is to track the manifesto, take the raw data. So for instance, in agriculture, we mention the promise and we give a status, whether delivered, pending, or delivering. And then we indicate the sector that you can find that particular thing. What we have done was to track the manifesto, take the promises, and present to you what we have done on them. You are looking for details as to when we say
facts backing the conclusion.
When we say we promise to build 1,000 boreholes, we should list all the 1,000 boreholes under it, and then there should be somewhere a hyperlink. Once you click it, you see all the 1,000. Exactly. That is also a voluminous work to do. But across all sectors, yes, no, for this particular, you must get the objective for this exercise. Okay. The objective was to track our manifestos, give indication to Ghanaian people, give signals as to what we have done with these manifesto promises, delivered, pending, or what. The details of it are always available, of course. Like it's a suggestion which we can decide to take on board.
I need that available to me as a journalist. No problem. Because you know what? Once I mention this sector, you know the politics. The NDC will say they might not even use a charitable word. They will say it's a lie. Okay? And then when they say that, you the one interrogating the matter, you do not know what else to say to them. because I need to be able to get to the details. So I think you should do that. This is a very good thing that helps all of us.
So what we did, and I think Doc should speak to that, and that's what you're saying. You deliver or you don't. It's a 1 or a 0. And then some you are in the process of delivering. Honesty means you go and tell us we've delivered up to 60%, 40%, 30%. So we have in our rubric partially fulfilled, and we put a fraction there. I think that's what they should do.
Yeah, I agree with Kofi.
Yes, but that's not what I am seeking. So if I went to delivery.gh.org,
yes,
and they say agric sector,
yes,
they say delivered,
yes,
I want to see the items delivered.
So you want the actual item.
Exactly.
That is the detail you want. And I'm saying that it is something that we can take on board.
Work in progress.
But yes, but what we have done is that we have pointed you to the agency or the ministry where this execution has taken place. And so it is always easy to get that data. But I get your point. I get your point.
Thank you.
We can decide to augment what we have done by providing these details that we are requesting for. That is another leg of it that we can decide to do. But the basics of it was to present the data as we have done. And just as Kofi said, Imani also did something similar. And I must commend that when we requested for their data, they gave us, and we also examined it and saw what they have done.
So, John, like he started, I asked him to do a sort of an introduction that gives us a picture. So imagine that I was not convinced. I have listened to everything you presented. I have read your statements and your PowerPoints. Imagine I was not convinced. In the next 5-6 minutes, convince me.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy that we are trying to contextualize the discussion.
Right.
Because if you don't contextualize the discussion and get the framework within which you want to discuss, you might be shooting off.
So give us the highlight. We'll get to the
First of all, what
Dr.
Bawumia did was to lump some issues together and say 78% either delivered or being delivered. You are a lecturer. What's the meaning of that? Tell us what you have delivered and tell us what you are in the process of delivering and what you've not been able to deliver. At least you would have then set the proper framework for intellectual analytical discourse. But to just tell us that deliver, I'm coming there. You indicated that Zongo Development Fund delivered. What is that? You stated categorically that the Zongos were impoverished. And so you were establishing a Zongo Development Fund with a seed money of 200 million in order to lift them out of poverty, invest in infrastructure, in schools, and in clinics. Then you set up a ministry, put your boys there, and then come to tell Ghanaians that you have delivered.
Has it been established?
No.
What is the meaning of this? And I'm happy
so you see, you must make your presentation in a way that doesn't invite his intervention.
Established. Yes.
But he said a lot of things that I disagreed with him. He accused President Mahama and said President Mahama never did A, B, C, D. I kept quiet. We must have the temperament to allow each other to flow.
Stop pointing your fingers at him. You make your presentation.
So something. No problem. I'm sorry if I pointed my. Sometimes when I talk the gesticulation. So you promise the people that look, I will set up a Zongo Development Fund. What is the object of the Zongo Development Fund? To lift the people out of poverty, to invest in the Zongos, and then once you set up a ministry, you then proceed. Jump on and say that I have delivered my promise.
It was a promise.
Ladies and gentlemen, is this how we deliver promises? Something I have here. And I did some work. Look, this is a compilation of the 2020 report that appeared before Parliament. I have 2017, I have 2018,
report of
2019. Annual budget estimates for various sector ministries for 2020 financial year. So I've compiled all of them, report of the Finance Committee on the appropriations bill and everything. I tried to keep track of it. So let me just use one example. Zongo Development Fund, 2017, not a dime was released. Not even one cedi. 2018, and I have the figures here, Samson. I'll give you the figures so that if you want to project it, you can project it. As I speak, I'll give you all the figures that I compiled. Not one pesewa was released for capital expenditure. 2019, do you know how much they released for investment? 7 million. So over there, 3-year period,
2017, 2018, 2019, 7 million. The amount they spent even on goods and services, on themselves, salaries, compensation, in order to achieve this infrastructure, was in far much higher than how much they even spent on the Zongos. You spent 7 million for over 2,000 Zongos in 3 years, and then you mount the platform and tell the people that you have delivered. I have another report here. And you see, I'm happy that Dr. Baumia is inviting us to speak to facts and figures. Report of the Committee of Employment, Social Welfare and State Enterprises, Budget Implementation Performance Report in respect of the Ministry of Special Development Initiatives. This government promised us that they will give each district $1 million per constituency every year. This is the 4th year. Go and check how much they have released. When I did the total for the whole 3 years, they have released 47,000 per constituency.
Interesting.
These are your figures, not my figures.
That is wrong.
So your chairman Professor Kwame, Honorable Kwame Enyimedu Entry, Chairman, Committee on Employment, Social Welfare and State Enterprises, Anthony Ejekum, clerk to the committee.
There's a difference between having the data and reading and interpreting it as it ought to be.
Gideon, Gideon, hold on.
You cannot mislead.
But you see, what you just read about the one constituency, $1 million, does not account for the ambulance.
Yeah, that is a loan.
But that's part of the one constituency.
You don't go
$1 million.
That is why our debt to GDP today is 62.25. No. That is why it's moved from 54, based on the 120 million debt they inherited, to 62.25. These are not my figures. These are figures as submitted by the ministry. If the ministry felt that as at this time, by the end of 2019, those monies had been released for them to spend, they should have captured that here. What was the promise? The promise is that we'll make 1 million available for you to spend. And you are now accounting for your outturns. This is, look, amount released. This amount released, 331,000. 311 million cedis.
John, after making the promise that 1 million will be made available, they explained that they will not give them the money, that they will spend the money
through this ministry.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
And they are the ones who just delivered, who are delivering the dams and just delivered the ambulances.
The toilet facilities.
If you build toilet facilities, you deliver dams, you deliver whatever, it has to be captured here.
No, but this data you are quoting.
Stop, please stop.
What's wrong with this data? No, what's wrong with this data?
No, Gideon, stop. Wait.
This data is wrong.
I'll come to that.
This is data from your ministry.
John, in a minute, you see, the purpose of how we have structured, and we discussed this even before we came live, that you spend the first 5-6 minutes giving us a broad overview
no, but he wouldn't allow me to make my point.
What you are going to discuss. No, you haven't done that. You have picked a single item and you are using it to consume your whole
time. Zongo Development Fund. Once I went to 1 million per constituency. So the bottom line is you tell us I might have released.
Okay, so proceed. Yeah.
So let me proceed. Then the Vice President makes some categorical statements about the energy sector. He makes the claim that they are the first government to have reduced electricity. That is false. And I've proven that is false. Because if you go to my Joy Online, it is clearly stated. And I decided to use my Joy Online for all my analysis, as well as the figures. Then the tariff you pay today. This is electricity tariff reckoner, effective 1st October 2019. This is the latest reckoner. And then the one we left was 1st July 2019. If you were to consume 150 during our time, you would pay 88 cedi. Today, if you consume the same units, and I'm comparing apples with apples, you pay 93 cedi. How the Vice President is able to determine that from 88 to 93 leads to a reduction can only be a matter of factual inaccuracy. And so clearly, the Vice President decided to do what I describe as statistical galamsey. He picks figures here, bundle them together, and say that I've achieved 78%. That cannot be done in any intellectual academic setting. This is alien to academic intellectual discourse. You cannot do that. And I'm happy you try to draw him to that level. That look, let us be consistent, let us be realistic. And then why I said that you can't do this analysis in vacuum. And I'm happy you use the word exogenous and endogenous shocks. If you have shocks, it affects your rate of growth. And he said 3% paltry. In that GDP growth rate, there's the non-oil and the oil. You don't control the oil prices, neither do you control oil volumes. So if your volumes go down, it means that there's an endogenous shock. If the prices go down in the world market, it means that there's an exogenous shock. So it will be disingenuous to just say that, look, you achieve only 3%, I achieve 6%. When you know that your petroleum revenues doubled or tripled in terms of volumes and even in terms of receipts. So what he did is very alien to the academia, is very alien for any proper discourse. He set his own questions, set his own answers, and went ahead to grade himself 78%. That 78% is nothing but a fallacy of hasty generalization.
Interesting. Okay, so you hold it there, but there are substantive matters you raise which we'll interrogate. As I've already mentioned, some of the monies that you claim are missing, among other things. And I was actually trying to looking for the place where the Vice President spoke about electricity.
You just played it, everybody listening.
I suspect that there is something he said may have qualified same, but some of us may not have paid attention. I'll look for it and bring it. Okay, so Kofi and Dr. Texan, the reason you are here is so that when these gentlemen, you know, bandy the economic terms in a way that we cannot appreciate properly, you will assist us. What will be your overview in 5 minutes of the highlights?
So overview, and I like how you put it. We are trying to get a certain sense of context and make this meaningful. It is important for us to say that this is a very positive development in governance. Okay, that people or the people who run affairs feel a need to come and account to us. And I have to blow my own horn here. For 8 years, Imani was forcing this thing we call quantification. We were laughed at, but we have persisted for 8 years. And what we did is we will force you by going and checking what you've done and telling people, and you'll be forced to come and respond. Now, after so many years of doing it, which we call a manifesto, we have a situation now where the present government has felt the need to do it. It's a good thing. And I hope when government changes or as they continue, they will continue to give us this. For us who are citizens, now we need to start paying attention. If they talk about the road in your area and it's been done or it's not been done, now you can speak back and we'll continue to force them to account to us. So that's a very important point. And for that reason, I give the present government and Dr. Bawumia kudos. But they are politicians. And there's a say about statistics and damn lies. You can use statistics to do whatever you want to do. So we have to appreciate that they will seek to put an interpretation on the statistics that favors them, which is why whatever Dr. Boaku says, you should take that with a pinch of salt. Whatever the NDC say, take with a pinch of salt. Same with the NDC, okay? And hopefully those of us in the middle can give you a better view of things. So take, for instance, how they approach.
I wouldn't take with a pinch of salt if they rely on the statistical service, if they rely on the Bank of Ghana, if they rely on the presentations as submitted by the finance minister in parliament, and they are without debate.
Generally data,
so to speak. Yeah.
But the interpretation they put. So for us, for instance, we had a rubric where we said there are promises which have been totally fulfilled. For that, we give 1, which is equal to the 100%. Promises that have not been fulfilled at all, we give 0. Most promises are in some states of being fulfilled. So we looked at them and then we gave some sort of ranking based on how far they've gone. So something you're asking for something, let me show you something here, which the public doesn't know. But you see here, so here you see that 0.7 here, and we give a link. This is what you are looking for.
Yes.
The link gives you the further and better particulars.
Exactly.
Now, I urge Dr. Boakon, and to that extent, I will say that they took what we did seriously, and maybe he will concede that they may have learned a few things from us. You know, move from this point to a more granularity, okay, to do some of the things Samson is talking about. But in all honesty, 1, there were 510 promises. And when our report is on imaniafrica.org, you can go and look at it in detail. We show you everywhere the promises are. So we just don't say, we show you where they are, 510. they chose 388.
No, Kofi, that cannot be entirely correct.
That's what I'm saying. We show you where they are.
There are some promises you broke down them into pieces.
Oh, if you say, I will build a school and put Wi-Fi in it, that's to you one promise.
But you take it as two.
For us, you build a school, you put Wi-Fi. There are two promises, which is why I'm saying data speaks for itself.
And that will also inform how you assess it in terms of the implementation.
My point
level,
is, you see,
which may be different from ours. So I agree with you.
Joe was trying to tell you something.
The numerics can be
so he said
we cannot get into the arguments.
Yeah. So I'm saying, we urge you to go into that level of detail because that is what people need. I appreciate that you want
information. I've just been informed that there has been a remarks session that has been updated on the website.
Thank you.
So on the website now, this moment.
Yeah, that is what I've been informed.
So 510 against 388. And then also, this idea of we've done it or we've not done it, and then rating something which you are in the process of doing as having been done is sad. And look, if you take, for instance, the ambulances, at the time we were ranking them, we saw them working on them, but they hadn't concluded. We gave a certain ranking. As we speak, you can say they have done it. Point I am making is this. You need, if you really want honesty, to agree that you need to go to a certain level of granularity and give more explanation to the things that you have done, especially the things you have not done, and maybe account for why you are where you are. And there are things that you have not touched at all. Now, there is also the issue of weighting. Okay, weighting, what we mean is that not every promise has the same level of importance. If you are doing governance, for instance, free SHS, regardless of the merits which sometimes we don't agree on, okay, it's not of the same weight in terms of economic and social importance, okay, as, for instance, domestic airline policy. Domestic airline policy affects a very small, section of our society. So we put weights on these things. They didn't weight anything at all. We think that's not the best. Going forward, work towards weighting these things. And these weights, therefore, give you a sense of priority. Okay, we have the roads being done right now. Okay, I like the fact that the roads are
So in terms of domestic airline, you're talking about the removal of the 17% VAT.
VAT on domestic airline.
Right.
You may have achieved it, but what is the real importance of that?
Is it because they are doing their own assessment? If it were the NDC assessing what they have done, you see, at various places, they talk about removing 17% of VAT, 17% of VAT. The NDC would have put all that together and simply say 17%, not the specific areas, right?
So what I'm saying,
but they do that, and it increases the number of things they have done.
Yes, and that is why I'm saying people put an interpretation on the data that suits them. So whatever we do, everywhere in the world, politicians are prone to doing that. But we should continue to push back.
I agree with you, but I think the limitation on the weighting is that it will give people room to be very subjective and decide that for areas that we are doing better, we are caught higher weights.
Well, but
that is why we think the raw
thank
data,
you. Kofi will conclude shortly, and then we'll bring Dr. Texan in.
Yes, I mean, those ones can be
Kofi, look to conclude, yeah.
We think that the discussion is important, but we expect that going forward, there will be more detail, okay? And then also, we found something out, and again, Dr. Boakun, that some of the promises that had been made were not recorded anywhere. Basically, they had forgotten about them. And I'm trying not to review too much, but we had meetings with some ministries, and they realized that we were telling them things that had been promised, which they were not aware of, and they realized it's really there because we showed you where it was. I'm looking at the general governance issues. Please be careful what you say, what you promise, because this is our life. Now, know what you've said, and it is our money you are using. It's not everything that we need today. And we worry about promises that are made because ultimately you have to use tax funds to go and do them. So be careful what you promise. When you promise it, note it very well. Now, make sure you can deliver on it. And if you have delivered on it, tell us exactly where you've gotten to and where you want to get to so that we will feel like we really are the ones you are working for and you are reporting to us. So congrats on this one, but we disagree on a number of things, but it's, a job in the right direction.
Right. So Dr. Texan, whilst Kofi Bento says this is a very good thing to do so that all of us as citizens can be part of measuring what has been done, I don't know, before you make your own presentation, I don't know what you think. When Dr. Banko, for example, said this is the economic management team, meeting and accounting to the people, so to speak, when you look at the tone of what was done, even in the script, Does it not suggest to you clearly that this is setting the stage for election 2020 campaign rather than, you know, doing a state event and you had the Deputy Minister of Information asking the people to cheer on and say Nanaye and so on? Is that politics or that's, you know?
I mean, something, the good thing is that we have a government that tries to account to its people, like Kofi said, and vice presidents come to us with statistics to tell us how well they are doing. I mean, whether it's an election year, it's meant to be more of a political campaign strategy. It's refreshing that he's come to us. He said, look, this is what I've delivered over the years.
No, because we know that this is what he did largely to give the NPP the electoral majority that they got for 2016.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's continuing with it to try to...
So he's gone back to the same thing, campaign.
Yes, but the good thing is that he's no longer in opposition. He's now putting his government on the line for us to scrutinize what they've been able to do in government, which is good. Because you could have done this in opposition, but when you come to government, you decide to keep quiet because you don't want to put yourself out there for the scrutiny that we are sitting here today to do, which is very good. And Kofi alluded to that. I mean, for me, what is important is not necessarily the percentage of manifesto promises that have been made. I don't really go into much of those promises. For me, what is important, and Gideon mentioned this, is that what has happened to our economy over the last 3 years. Because whatever promises that are made, if our economy is not doing well, we cannot fulfill those promises. We need an economy to be stable. We need an economy that is expanding. We need an economy that would give promise to investors for them to come and invest. And that, for me, as an economist, as I sit here, is the main thing that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to go into the politics, because once you go into the politics, if you don't take care, you position yourself at one side of the political spectrum, and you know what happens when you normally do that. So I'll leave that to a good, judgment of Ghanaians.
Let me tell you this. Irrespective of what you do, the politicians listening, they will pigeonhole you in one place.
Yes, I don't have any problem with that.
So please go ahead and do your job. Okay? Do your job.
I'm doing my job, but I'm saying I'm not going to the politicking of whether this has been achieved 20%.
Once you say something that doesn't favor one,
I understand.
Party,
I'm used to that.
whether it is the fact, sacrosanct fact or not,
I'm used
the
to that.
politician doesn't care. They will tell you are NDC or NDC.
I'm used to that. I've had that over
so
time.
Ignore that and make
your presentation. I've ignored it, but I'm saying that my concentration is on the economy.
Okay.
Now, the first thing I did when I listened to him was begin to take his statistics and go and cross-check as an economist and somebody who does research.
Right.
And it's on record that the statistics that have been put there are reliable estimates of whatever he talked about.
Okay.
As to whether the way he went about it is an issue the opposition has a problem with, they will deal with that on their own. But it is very important to note that our Ghanaian economy is back on track, for me, which is most important. And he, in the initial stage of his presentations, clearly looked at the various sections of the economy and what they've done compared to what has happened in the past. I mean, at times, these comparisons then move us to the level where we begin to do the politicking. I mean, I see governance as a continuous process. So for me, it's more of the government of Ghana has achieved this. But he decided to look at the various periods ever since 1992 and then compare that to what they've done in the... Now, the first thing that came to my attention was the fact that almost all the macro indicators are looking really good for Ghana. And especially if you look at the fact that in 2015, 2014, 2015, you had to run to the IMF because we had issues about credibility. And when your policy is not credible, you don't achieve the results. I mean, because economic agents also do their own thing, and at times it will work against whatever you try to do. Now, what is important now is that we have an economy where we clearly have a government that has committed to fiscal discipline, which is one of the main problems that we've had in this economy over the years. Every year in an election year, we promise to keep our deficits low, we overspend. And so we have this cycle where we clean up the mess, and then in an election year, we sacrifice everything, and then we start all over, just because we want to win an election. So the Fiscal Responsibility Act that the government has signed on, which means that the government is not going to spend below 5% in deficit. It's a good thing.
Yeah, and that's an achievement.
Precisely. I mean, it's a good thing. So, and like I always say,
beyond the Fiscal Responsibility Act, there is also the Fiscal Responsibility Council.
Yes, the council as well. I was going to go that. So these are things that they've done that we need to congratulate them. And I always say that when they do well, we need to congratulate them. When they don't do well, we criticize them, like we've always done. And that is a good thing, and that is what we need in this economy. Now, the other issues about the economy that I think that will go through them, like the public debt issue that John has a problem with. And that's not denying the fact that, I mean, our stock of our public debt has increased by 76% ever since the NDC MPP took over. But if you look at his discussion of the growth of the debt, that is where there's a contention.
Who's discussing?
Dr. Bamia's discussion of the growth of the debt. What he does in that presentation is to tell you that, yes, our debt was 122 billion when he took over. It's now 240 billion. But then in terms of the growth, ours is lower than what the NDC inherited in 2008 and where they brought us to 2016. And there's no problem with the indicators that he gave. So John should go back, I listening to him, he should go back and find out what Dr. Bobia meant that we've done better. What he was trying, I think, he was trying to say was that we've done better at increasing the growth or increasing our debt than you did. Because if you move the debt from 26 to 76, that is about threefold. If I move from 122 to 204, it's less than a twofold. So I would have done better.
No, from the optics, and for those of us who do not have the kind of mind you have to these things, somebody has spent 8 years and you are comparing less than 4 years with this quantum. It speaks volumes. It tells me how badly you are doing, and you don't even have a right to criticize that other person having accumulated debt.
No. I mean, the debt is accumulating. There's no doubt about it.
Okay.
We've moved from the 54, we are now at 62.5. So the debt is accumulating. What he sought to do, I'm saying that when I sit back and I look at his analysis, what he sought to do was to try to explain the extent to which we have grown our debt over the years.
Exactly.
And he compares it with what was there before. Now, when you come to the quantum of the debt itself, yes, it's a huge quantum. I mean, 92 billion in 3 years. It's a lot of money, which might even be much more than the NDC left when they left power. But in terms of the percentage of our GDP, there's not much that has changed. And for me, what I always say is this. Look, Japan is the world's most indebted country. And when I teach my students development, I tell them that there are three critical components when you begin to analyze debt to GDP ratio. One, is the economy able to sustain itself to repay the debt? It is not a quantum percentage of GDP that really matters. If my debt to GDP is 20% of my GDP, but that money has not gone into expanding the productive capacity of my economy.
So the NDC is right. They say you are borrowing to take care of breakfast, lunch, and supper. You are not investing. And so that's how wasteful you are being. That's how most incompetent you are. Yeah, you say they were incompetent.
We need to have a discussion of that to look at the content of the borrowing and what has been useful. Exactly. Okay. And that's not a discussion we are doing now. For me, the discussion is that supposing our debt to GDP ratio is 62.5%, what have we used the money for?
Yeah, okay. I mean, that is
all right. So this is the point where I take my break, and when I return, we get into various specifics and interrogate them. We cannot interrogate all the issues, but we'll take some of them. There's the energy sector. There's the claims about, the approach to slowing the depreciation. The NDC disagrees. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Okay, so I'm going to John and then see if we can quickly clear a number of issues. And then I'll come to Gideon, specific issues. We seek to clear them and then move on. So you suggest, as I mentioned in your sort of rebuttal, you said that petroleum receipts, 6 billion Ghana cedis was received by John Mahama, but there's evidence to show what he used it for. that there's 20 billion at the end of 2022, Nana Adudankwa Akufo-Addo, and there's nothing to show for. And you said energy sector also, 3 billion is what John Mahama had, and yet you can show what he used it for, 12 billion so far under Akufo-Addo, and yet there is nothing to show for it. Tie that in the critical issue that you raised about what you say is unaccounted, and I'm using measured words. You said more than that. 655 of that money is unaccounted for. How do you justify the claims you make in this regard?
Yes, I made that claim. And if you go to the Public Interest and Accountability Committee report, PIAC report of 2018, they confirmed this figure. If you go to my Joy Online, that figure is confirmed as well. And I can give you the references here. So it's not as if Jinapo just all of a sudden manufactured figures. I dealt with secondary sources. So you go to the document, pick the figures. And they said that between 2017, 2018, 625 million was unspent and cannot be accounted for. We even sat on this at a committee and asked the finance minister. And he said it's gone back to government chairs and it's part of the preceding year, the revenue. So show us that line item. Because in the fiscal tables, they show the line item. And so if you pick petroleum revenues, 625 million, and you didn't spend it, and it went into the next year, and you added it, it must come under ABFA, because it's petroleum revenue, and that must be accounted for. Up to now, that has not been accounted for.
You mean you are not satisfied with the explanation?
It's not,
because
it's
you were
not
told
an issue
that because it was not spent, it went back to chest.
It's even wrong, because ABFA monies are accounted for specially. And that is why in the budget, there's a line item for ABFA.
So there was explanation, except that you are not satisfied with it.
That explanation cannot hold, because this is ABFA money. It is treated as a line item and is accounted for as a line item. And to the extent that you cannot account for that as a line item, it's not been accounted for. And if you said you put it in the budget, show me the line item at the revenue side where that money was captured. If you can't show me, the only conclusion is
you've not been able to do that.
They haven't been able to do that. If they can do that here, let's go ahead.
Okay, so then so as a legislator representing your people and Ghanaians at large, you have left that at that?
I haven't left. I've brought that for discussion. I've brought that up. That's the style I've chosen, and I'm entitled to do that.
Okay.
I've raised it on the floor. It's unsatisfactory. I've raised it at debate. It's unsatisfactory. I've brought it to the public domain.
Okay.
Let us discuss
now the
that.
funding that you say has come to the president, and yet, so the president, so to speak, and yet there is nothing to show for it.
Yes.
You actually went further to suggest that even though you are aware that a chunk of the money as reserved for the purposes of public expenditure has gone into free SHS.
Once again,
you have an issue with that. So it is not that there's no infrastructure or something to show, but the money has gone into some expenditure that you disagree with.
Not me. Not me. Once again, I quote the reference, and every document I quote, I mention the document, the page, and the paragraph.
Okay.
I refer to the PIAC report, Public Interest and Accountability report on the management of petroleum revenues for 2017. I refer to paragraph 23. In the 2017 financial year, only 37% of the utilized ABFA was used for capital expenditure, less than the 70% stipulated in the PRMA. It's not John Jinapo who is making this assertion. It's a statutory body. This is a report that was laid before Parliament. Parliament is led by the MPP majority. We debated it and adopted it, and even made recommendations to the minister that follow the provisions of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. This is a law at 815/2011 that was passed by Parliament, and Parliament has taken cognizance of it. And so it's not John Jinapo who is making that.
You said that the utilization of revenues, especially ABFA and ESLA proceeds, under this administration has been most disappointing. The instances you provide, the 2018 financial year only 49% of ABFA expenditure was used for capital expenditure, while 51% was utilized for the supply of goods and services, a clear violation of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act.
I've just stated it here. Is it a fact or not? Did they use 49% for capital expenditure? That's a fact.
Is that the requirement of the law? That has to be capital expenditure?
It says that it's less than the 70% stipulated in the PRMA. I'm not PIAC. PIAC is a creator of law. And then you look at the revenues themselves, and I gave the figures. If they dispute the revenues, let them state it. We had 71 billion in our first 3 years. They've had 141 billion. I captured all this from the media budget review. And if they argue, I'll give them the various paragraphs. And I stated, from the petroleum revenues, I stated, and I did a chart, and I took this from the Bank of Ghana reconciliation report of the petroleum funds. These are the figures. What we got, what they got in cities.
The law's requirement is for the 70% of the ABFA to be used for public investment expenditure, not so. It's not about capital expenditure.
We have debated this.
They say they have put the money into free SHS. That's priority.
Sometimes I'm not debating free SHS. I organized a program. I made copious quotes from a public document, which is before Parliament. If the MPP had issues with that, and they believe that when you say investments, it refers to goods and services, and investment does not refer to investments that are multi-year, they should have debated that. This is not the forum to even engage me, because I'm quoting from a secondary source. So I cannot even be a subject for debate.
The law says for any financial year, that's section 21(4), any financial year, a minimum of 70% of the annual budget funding amount, that's the ABFA, shall be used for public investment expenditure consistent with long-term national development plan.
Long-term national development plan, that is it. So if they have a debate, they should deal with PIAC. Then I looked at the revenues themselves.
So if PIAC is wrong, would you take that to accuse and indict
I don't hold the fact that PIAC is wrong. I hold investments in public expenditure to mean that you do it and it will have a long-term benefit in terms of real investment. And Parliament debated it. I'm not the only person who debated it. They have majority in Parliament.
Right.
The Speaker is from the MPP. The leader is from the MPP.
Briefly, on the matter of energy too, you say that the Vice President was peddling falsehood.
Oh, I've cleared the air. That it's not true that they are the only government that reduced tariffs. The evidence is here. I've used the record to let you know that his claim that the tariffs today are lower than before they came is false. This is public record. This is not my opinion. And I brought the data here. If he has figures, that shows that what I'm saying is contrary. Let us deal with that. The Vice President himself claimed in 2016 that we had ended Doomso. But you see, the issue of ending Doomso is not for me or the MPP to determine that. They are statutory bodies. How can you leave that to politicians? Go and look at what Gridco said in February when they indicated that we've had enough reserves now and that Doomso was over, but they were monitoring the system.
In February of?
Since February 2016. Since then, they never declared load shedding. So it's not even a subject matter for political debate. I don't see why we debate everything political. But I have some key issues, something quickly. Because those issues are very important.
Which issues?
Just
tell me, give me the list.
No, I'm just giving you some outcomes.
Okay.
Because these are macro figures I wanted to deal with.
I need you to deal with just one.
1 minute or 2 minutes.
I'll go to Gideon,
Over the years, we have spent as a percentage of GDP, capital expenditure, 4%. MPP has done maximum 1.6, 1.5, 3.1. When you strike the average, it's just about 2%. So whilst we did 4, they did 2% in terms of capital expenditure. And so if you look at analytical sectoral analysis, construction sector, we were growing at 8.4%. Today they are growing at minus 8.4%. Agriculture sector, by the time we're leaving, it was 3%. The latest budget now is 2.6%. If you take electricity, we're growing at an asset rate of 4%. Today it is 0.5%. If you take our national debt, like we said, from 54, we are now doing 62.25. If you take the manufacturing sector, we're growing at 7.9. Today is 6.5. If you take currency depreciation, by the time they took over office, the dollar to the cedi was 9.6. We appreciated with the pound, and then with the euro, it was 5%. Today, if you read the latest MPC report of 2020, the dollar to the cedi is about 13%. I prefer a 9% depreciation to a 13% depreciation. I prefer a 5% depreciation of the cedi to a 15% depreciation against the pound. Finally, the financial sector. And for me, this is clear for me. financial and insurance sector growth, when we were leaving it for office, it was 8%. Today, despite the so-called reforms, it is 1.8%. Private sector, credit to the private sector. During our time, it was 14.4%. Today, if you read the 2020 budget, it is 12%. Let anyone take these figures that I've provided, dispute them, or say that, look, these figures you are quoting are not wrong. Okay. All these are figures from the budget.
Gideon, how do you respond, starting with the agri sector, for example, where, and this construction manufacturing sector that he refers to, where there is negative growth from the statistics that he uses, which he says
2020 budget.
He's taking from the 2020 budget. And yet, when you look at what Bawumia did, it tells a completely different story.
Samson, I'm quite surprised, and I, to be honest with you, John, the figures you are putting out, they are all wrong.
So can I just read one?
No, stop.
Please, I'm
Hold
coming.
on.
No, but
don't interrupt.
Please, for somebody to just say
he says the figures are wrong. Hold it there.
Please, I'm coming.
Yes.
Please, I'm coming. Agriculture growth, what are you talking about? That you left what? You left 2.9%. In 2018, agriculture growth was 6.8%. And 2019 was projected at 6.4%. Where is he getting the 2-point-something% from?
Okay.
So please.
So once again, his source, he says, it's the 2020 budget.
What is he talking? Is he talking about a growth figure for a particular quarter or what?
So,
I mean, I don't understand. That is the problem.
I've seen them myself. Locate those figures.
And he's talking about depreciation today of 13%. Today, the CD has appreciated against the dollar by 3.5%.
Over what period?
No. That's what I'm saying.
I'm saying the 2019.
Please, hold on.
Please. When you want to make reference to 2019 budget, say such. Don't say today.
Are you there?
Please, when you say today, what are you talking about? Today, the CD is the best performing currency against the dollar globally. It is appreciating. You can't come and sit here and throw figures away just for the sake of communicating. That is not right. Look, you said a lot of things here that are untrue. You said that Bawumia said you didn't end doing so, and he's a liar. Look, go to July 2016. Statement that was made
on
by
this platform. I have not allowed anybody to use he's a liar.
Okay.
Okay.
Go to July 2016.
So I'm just saying
a statement that was made by ECG workers and published on Ghana Web. They were complaining about doing so.
That's false.
Oh, please, I'm coming. You sat here and also said that you did not reduce electricity prices, and that when Vice President Bawumia says that it is only this government since 1992 that has reduced electricity price. That is not true. And you made reference to my John Online story. Read that story letter by letter and very well. There was no point in our country that time that electricity prices were increased and affected the people and it was reduced. There was a plan to increase electricity prices. There was public uproar and the government came and backtracked. That is what happened. Electricity prices never increased and reduced during your period. And so the statistics the Vice President gave really speak to the data that you increased electricity prices by 89% in 2010, 10% in 2011, 2012 election year, so sophistry and wise as you were, you decided not to increase it. 2013, after you won power, you increased it by 78%, 2014, 28.36%, 2015, 59.2%, 2016, again election year, you never increased. It presupposes implicitly that if you had won power in 2017, you're going to increase it. This government didn't increase electricity prices in 2017. 2018 reduced it cumulatively by 22.8%, and 2019 reduced it by 11.1%. When you net it off, the cumulative and the net effect on the electricity prices is a reduction. And that is what the Vice President is talking about. Now you make reference you make reference to how much a 150 unit of electricity was costing in 2016 as 88 cities.
Yes.
And today it is costing 93 cities, and you don't understand. When the Vice President talks about percentage changes in the electricity, in the electricity prices, he's more or less talking about the inflation on the electricity prices. Please, inflation is the persistent increases in prices. A reduction in inflation does not ultimately mean that prices will not go up. What it means is that prices will go up by increase at a decreasing rate. That is the understanding you need to get. Now, between that period, if prices for 150 units of power had gone up from 88 to 93, what is the difference in nominal terms? In 5 Ghana cedis. if somebody who has net in cumulative terms reduced electricity prices by 10%, is increasing by 5 cedis in nominal terms over a 3-year period, it means that you that increase electricity prices cumulatively by 82.5% in 3 years, we would have been buying the same 150 units of power from you at 175.
Is that not a wrong assumption?
That is simple proportion.
That is a wrong assumption.
That is simple proportion.
You invented the gas processing plant.
No, what do you mean? We are talking about the net effect on the consumer. Please, I'm coming. We are talking about the net effect of the consumer. In 3 years, we have increased in nominal terms electricity prices for 150 units of power for 5 Ghana cedis by reducing it in net terms by 10%. For you, that in 3 years increased it by 85.something%, we would have been buying the same 150 units, 175 Ghana cedis. That is the contrast and the difference you need to appreciate. Now he goes on to talk about the PIAC report. And look at the interpretation John puts on the PIAC report. The PIAC report simply stated that amount of 826.65 million of ABFA allocation was utilized, leaving 255. If you add that to the 2017 figure, you get 665 million. Then he says here to say that that money is missing, nobody can account for it. Who told you nobody can account for it? What you understand, you should understand, and you know, he knows very well, that the oil money does not all come in the same time. Some come and some come in the preceding years. So when it is not captured in the previous year's ABFA, the Petroleum Management Act is silent on how it is treated. Government can decide to treat it in the next budget, not under ABFA. That is it. That is it. And that was how. No, I'm referring you to the law.
Which law?
I am referring you to the law. Am I referring you to the law? The same Petroleum Management Report Act that you're talking about.
That says you can do that.
Okay, that is what I'm talking about. It's the same thing, and it is silent on that. So government, no, that is what the law says. You are a member of parliament. Tell us how you did it. The law is silent on that. The law is silent on that. So government decided to treat it not under ABFA, but into the mainstream budget. And you're saying you can't find it. You are a member of parliament. Government is telling you this is where we put it. You say you can't find it, and you are keeping quiet in parliament. You are not reporting. You are not taking any action. What kind of work are you doing here as parliamentarians? That is what you need to understand. Then he goes on to talk about another matter, where in his press conference he says that ABFA and ESLA process under this administration has been disappointed, the management of it. You talk about the 49% of ABFA in 2018 financial year and the subsequent 51% that we cannot see. And something referred you to the relevant portions of the law. When we talk of public investment, it does not necessarily mean capital expenditure. That is the understanding we must get. Public investment does not ultimately mean capital expenditure. And therefore, free SHS is public investment. Even if you go down to read the section 3 of the law, it itemizes things that can be included within that framework. And it talks about service delivery in education and science and technology. All of these are captured in the law. Yet, you will blind your eyes, you wouldn't see it, and then you throw
to the majority.
I'm saying it to you. I'm saying it to you. You are saying it.
To the majority.
You are saying it.
They said it in the report that you didn't meet the PRMA law.
Listen, you have decided to misconstrue.
No, but I ask you the same question.
Yes.
That if this is what PIAC is saying, you would know the law and you would see the specific portions. Are you not entitled to disagree with them?
Yes, and I'm saying we debated it there and came to conclusion that based on the PRMA law, when we talk of that investment,
all right, so
we're talking of capital expenditure.
Came to what conclusion? So, I mean, the point I want to make to John is that when you want to deal with data in a way that people may attach some credibility to it.
The global picture he gives is convincing that petroleum receipts, you know, in excess of 20 billion that Akufo-Addo, so the government is getting. John Mahama got only 6 billion.
First and foremost,
then he refers to energy sector, where we are talking about 3 billion for John Mahama and 12 billion for President Akufo-Addo.
I'm very certain in my mind.
Too much has been given, yet very little has been seen.
I'm very certain in my mind that our listeners and our viewers will take whatever data John has put here with a pinch of salt based on this, what I've said.
In your mind,
so he can bandy around figures. I've disputed a lot of figures. You are quoting agreed figures. You are getting
it wrong. Figure is here.
Oh, my friend, it is not true.
Okay.
It is not true, John.
So I'm taking a break here. John, still continue looking for the agriculture figure. and then we'll come to see whether, in fact, it was growing at a negative growth or not. It grew at 7.3%.
2019 source.
Okay.
Source.
All right. All right. And what's your source?
DSS.
The minister's budget.
Yeah, the
okay.
We'll go there. We will go there.
No. Okay, so I'll take a break. I'll be right back. All right, so you're welcome back. This is Newsfile. My guests, Dr. Ebo Texin, Dr. Gideon Boako, John Jinapo, and Kofi Bentel. And in 30 seconds, Gideon, and your very final take here. The question of the Dumso, you cannot claim to have ended it. And I'm making a reference, just one reference. On the 29th of February 2016, candidate Akufo-Addo made a presentation at the College of Physicians and Surgeons. And among other things, this is what he said. He said, the president, referring to John Mahama, wants us to give him credit for resolving Dumso, which was caused by economic and financial mismanagement of his government. So how can you expect credit for resolving a problem that you have caused, which has inflicted such a high cost on the nation? What would be the case if the resolution turns out to be temporary? Would the president accept blame? So I think we can all accept that you didn't end Dumso.
Some say it is not true. There is this that I wanted to refer you to, where President Mahama had also said that Dumso is not over yet. And I'm just opening the link to give you the exact date, okay? No, please.
I gave you 30 seconds. We have actually run out of time.
And then I made reference to the ECG workers' statement that they made. This one is April 2016. This is President Mahama.
Okay.
April 2016. He says Dumso is not over yet, Mahama.
Read it. No, please. Is that a heading of a story or the story, a quotation?
I've read the story. If you have time, I can read the story to you. You understand? So this is our
Yeah, Dr. Texin, whilst we're at the break, we are trying to resolve the question of the figures for our Greek sector and things. Is it really the case, as John suggests?
John was quoting outturns for the first 2 quarters of the year in 2019 compared to 2018. But we knew in the budget that the projected growth for that sector was, we expected our Greek to grow by 7.3%. Even if it doesn't grow by that amount.
And currently,
because at the time the budget...
He's right.
No, he's not right. He's right in terms of the quarterly comparison.
Okay.
First 2 quarters.
Thank you.
We need to discuss
Yes, Kofi.
We have data for third quarter.
Kofi. So,
when we have data for third quarter.
Very finally.
That's what I'm giving
yes.
you.
What do you also have to say? Gentlemen.
We'll talk about first 2 quarters when there's data for third quarter.
What do we make of all the things that they say when we know, for example, about how Standard & Poor's has upgraded Ghana's sovereign credit ratings from B- to B, stable.
I am interested in how people feel. It is a fact that in the first quarter of this year, the dollar is one of the best performing currencies.
Right.
Now, that's a good thing we must be happy about. Something led to that, and that is good management.
Okay.
I hope that can be sustained. It means a lot for us to have that macroeconomic stability.
Okay.
Another issue which I know there's no time, but look,
we are
out of time. 2009, we wrote that we should manage our oil revenues under an oil revenues commission.
Okay.
That is what became PIA. We should go back to that.
Thank you. Can you say something in just... Okay, I'm sorry, but we have run out of time. We are unable to say anything any further. It's very fair to you. You had sufficient time to deal with the issues. My guests have been Dr. Ebo Texin, Dr. Gideon Boako, John Jinapo, and Kofi Bentel. I'm Samson Ladi Ayanini. We come your way again next week with another edition of Newsfile. Thank you.